I was mocked for my humble beginnings, but my master plan turned their laughter into pure terror. The air in the Grand Convention Hall was thick, almost viscous, with the hushed anticipation of investors and tech enthusiasts. It was a palpable current of excitement, a low, buzzing hum that vibrated beneath the polished lights and off the vast, arching ceiling. On the massive screen behind him, a stark graphic of his AI platform's interface gleamed, deceptively simple in its minimalist design. The spotlight, however, was not on the elegant lines of code, nor entirely on Kalen Thorne himself. It was fixated with almost surgical precision on Theron Vance, his tailored suit a testament to generations of inherited wealth, his lips curled in a familiar, almost performative, condescending smirk. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, Theron's voice, amplified by the microphone, dripped with theatrical pity, each syllable carefully modulated for maximum effect. His gaze, laced with a mockery that felt like a physical touch, swept across the expectant faces of the room before landing squarely on Kalen. Kalen's visionary platform. A quaint little idea, truly. Perhaps a charming project for a high school science fair, a noble pursuit for an enthusiast. But a disruptor? A legitimate investment opportunity in this cutthroat, competitive landscape? He feared his esteemed colleagues and he found themselves unimpressed. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the audience, a few muffled snorts echoing from the front rows where venture capitalists and industry titans sat. Kalen's underdog pitch had, as Theron so meticulously intended, become a public spectacle of humiliation. Theron leaned closer to his microphone, his voice dropping conspiratorially, yet loud enough for every single person in the cavernous hall to hear. No prestigious university backing, no established corporate internships, just raw, untamed ambition. A noble sentiment, Kalen, truly. But ambition alone doesn't secure a multi-million-dollar valuation. It certainly doesn't replace a foundational understanding of real-world enterprise architecture, does it? His eyes, cold and triumphant, met Kalen's, a clear challenge burning within them. Theron paused, letting the laughter swell into a wave that crashed over Kalen, designed to drown him in its scorn. In that moment, Theron saw a defeated man, a naive dreamer whose fantastical aspirations had just been crushed by the harsh boot of reality. He envisioned the end of a long, arduous journey for Kalen, a final, public humiliation that would ensure his retreat from the industry. What Theron didn't see, what no one in that room could possibly comprehend, was the quiet hum of the system running in the background of Kalen's mind, a silent countdown ticking towards a truth so profound, so devastating to Theron's carefully constructed world, that it would turn their laughter into pure, unadulterated terror. Kalen's gaze remained steady, unwavering, a faint, almost imperceptible curve playing at the corner of his lips. Theron, in his smug certainty, saw a smile of resignation. Kalen felt the subtle tremor of anticipation. Theron spoke of ambition. Kalen had deployed a master plan years in the making. Theron saw him as the underdog. Kalen was the architect of his impending downfall. And he had merely just begun. The path that led Kalen Thorne to that stage, facing Theron Vance and a room full of mocking smiles, was paved with sacrifices, late nights that bled into dawn, and the kind of tenacious self-belief that only truly takes root when a person has absolutely nothing else to fall back on. At 24, Kalen was, by all conventional metrics, an anomaly. No Ivy League degree adorned his wall, no startup had been incubated in a Silicon Valley garage under his name, just an insatiable curiosity and an uncanny ability to see intricate patterns where others saw only chaos. His journey began not in the hallowed lecture halls of prestigious universities, but in the flickering glow of a borrowed laptop screen, powered by instant coffee and an unyielding conviction that technology held the undeniable key to unlocking possibilities for everyone, not just the privileged few. His family couldn't afford a prestigious university. In fact, they could barely afford rent most months. He remembered the sting of his mother's tired smile as she told him they'd manage, even as he knew the sacrifices she was making. He had briefly attended a local community college, dabbling in computer science, captivated by the logic and potential of code, before financial realities, like a cold, hard hand, forced him to drop out. It was there, amidst shared dorms that smelled faintly of stale pizza and the fleeting sense of normalcy college life offered, that he first encountered Theron Vance. Theron was everything Kaelan wasn't, and every facet of his being seemed designed to highlight that contrast. Heir apparent to the Vance Group, a venture capital firm with deep, almost ancient roots in tech and finance, Theron exuded an effortless arrogance born of inherited wealth and unquestioned status. He had a natural, almost visceral disdain for anything he perceived as common or unrefined. Their paths crossed in an introductory programming class, a requirement Theron begrudgingly fulfilled while boasting loudly about his family's latest multi-million-dollar acquisition during lab sessions. He saw Kaelan as a curiosity, the self-taught kid who somehow grasped complex algorithms faster than the tenured professor, who could debug lines of code with an almost intuitive grace. Theron would occasionally throw a backhanded compliment Kaelan's way, always, inevitably, followed by a subtle jab about his lack of formal pedigree or his quaint, idealistic notions about technology's potential for social good. Kaelan, he'd once drawled, leaning back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips, "You're like a wild horse with incredible speed, but no rider. All that raw talent and nowhere to direct it. Such a waste." His words, carefully chosen and meant to deflate, only served to strengthen Kaelan's resolve. He knew precisely where he was going. Theron, from his gilded cage, simply couldn't see the destination. After dropping out of college, Kaelan's physical world shrank to the cramped confines of his small apartment, but his ambition exploded, boundless and unchained. He became a voracious learner, devouring every free online course, every open-source project, every research paper he could unearth. His unconventional path wasn't a setback, it became, ironically, his greatest strength. Without the rigid confines of academia, its prescribed curricula and conventional methodologies, he developed a unique, holistic perspective on technological ecosystems. He didn't just learn to code, he learned to observe. He spent countless hours dissecting the hidden mechanics of vast digital infrastructures, not just the lines of code, but the human behaviors that shaped them, the intricate economic incentives driving their design, and crucially, the systemic vulnerabilities that often lurked beneath the polished surface of seemingly robust systems. He saw the cracks in the foundations that others, blinded by their top-down views, entirely missed. His secret weapon, the very core of his AI platform, wasn't just another machine learning model, a sophisticated algorithm designed for surface-level analysis. It was an advanced predictive analytics engine, something he initially dubbed Project Cassandra, after the prophetess who foresaw doom but was never believed. It began as a solitary passion project, an AI meticulously designed to identify nascent trends in vast, disparate data streams, to predict subtle market shifts before they became apparent, and to map complex interdependencies within sprawling digital networks with astonishing, almost unnerving accuracy. But as he delved deeper, iterating tirelessly on its algorithms, feeding it ever more complex datasets, Kaelan realized Cassandra had an even more profound, more chilling capability. It could detect anomalies, patterns of interaction, and subtle architectural flaws that indicated deep-seated, systemic vulnerabilities within large-scale, interconnected systems. It could predict not just the next big trend, but the next big catastrophe. The turning point came roughly 2 years prior to the summit. He was working on a pro bono project for a nonprofit organization in the education sector, helping them optimize their data infrastructure and secure donor information. It was during this work that he stumbled upon a publicly available, albeit obscure, API documentation for a subsidiary of a major financial tech firm. Curiosity, an impulse he had learned to trust implicitly, compelled him to dig deeper. Using Cassandra, he began to map the dependencies of this subsidiary, and then, slowly, meticulously, the broader ecosystem of its parent company. That parent company, as fate would so cruelly have it, was Vance Group Ventures, Theron's family firm. What Cassandra revealed was chilling to the core. Vance Group Ventures had recently acquired a legacy financial processing system, a relic from the early 2000s, integrating it into their core operations without fully modernizing its underlying architecture. They had simply built layers of new, seemingly secure applications on top, like a gleaming modern facade covering a decaying structure. The foundation, however, remained critically flawed. Cassandra identified a sophisticated, multi-stage vulnerability, a logic bomb, of sorts, deeply embedded within their primary transaction validation system. It wasn't a simple hackable port or an easily exploitable backdoor. It was a deeply ingrained architectural oversight, a flaw in the very logic of how transactions were processed and validated, which could allow for the silent, untraceable manipulation of vast sums of capital under specific, rare conditions. This vulnerability, if exploited, wouldn't just be a data breach or a minor system outage. It would be a systemic integrity failure, a silent hemorrhage of trust and capital that could unravel their entire financial network from within. Theron's firm, renowned for its ironclad security protocols and touted as an industry leader, was unknowingly sitting on a ticking time bomb, a financial doomsday device. Kalen's initial instinct, his ethical compass pointing him towards transparency, was to report it anonymously, to warn them through official channels. But then, a vivid memory of Theron's sneering dismissiveness resurfaced, his family's long history of steamrolling smaller entities, their unwavering belief in their own intellectual and financial superiority. He imagined sending them an anonymous email, detailing a complex architectural flaw that would require a deep dive to understand. They would dismiss it, perhaps even laugh at the audacity of an unknown, uncredentialed individual presuming to find flaws in their ironclad systems. His experience with Theron taught him that for them, seeing was believing, and even then, only if the messenger fit their preconceived notions of credibility. No, this wasn't just about exposing a vulnerability. This was about proving a fundamental truth, a truth that resonated deeply with his own journey, that true ingenuity wasn't confined to polished boardrooms and Ivy League campuses, and that arrogance, unchecked, would always lead to blindness. His plan began to crystallize, taking shape with a cold, calculated precision. He wouldn't just expose a vulnerability, he would expose their vulnerability, in a way that resonated with the very real-world enterprise architecture Theron so smugly championed. Cassandra, his quiet observer, would become his weapon, not of destruction, but of undeniable revelation. His underdog pitch at the tech summit wouldn't be just a presentation, it would be the meticulously crafted stage for a public, irrefutable demonstration of the very truth they refused to acknowledge. The weeks leading up to the underdog pitch summit were a blur of calculated movements and feigned transparency for Kalen. He knew Theron would be there, not just as an attendee, but as a judge, thanks to his family's immense sway in the industry. This was not a coincidence, it was a critical component of Kalen's design. Theron was the perfect foil, the ideal unwitting participant in his carefully orchestrated drama. Kalen's preparations were meticulous, almost surgical in their precision. He refined Project Cassandra, not just for its core analytical capabilities, but for its ability to demonstrate its findings in an undeniable, irrefutable manner. He created a simulated environment, a digital twin of Vance Group Ventures' vulnerable system, mirroring the architectural flaws Cassandra had detected with unnerving accuracy. This wasn't about breaching their actual systems, that would be illegal and unethical, a path Kalen would never take. This was about proving the existence of the flaw, its theoretical exploitability, and its devastating implications through a perfect, unimpeachable replication. He gathered every piece of publicly available information on Vance Group's tech stack, their recent acquisitions, their stated security protocols, all grist for Cassandra's analytical mill. Every data point, every interconnected node, every legacy system they had absorbed, reinforced the architectural oversight he had identified. During the pre-summit networking events, Kalen played the part of the earnest, slightly overwhelmed independent developer. He wore clothes that were neat but unassuming, avoiding anything that might signal wealth or pretension. He spoke about his passion for technology, his focus on accessibility, carefully avoiding any language that might hint at Cassandra's deeper, more threatening capabilities. Other investors, seasoned sharks with eyes for immediate profit, nodded politely, perhaps offering a dismissive business card, their expressions clearly indicating they saw him as a pleasant but ultimately uninvestable novelty. Theron, predictably, found him. He approached Kalen at a cocktail reception, a flute of vintage champagne in hand, his smile a thin veneer of false cordiality. "Kalen, old friend," he drawled, his eyes scanning Kalen's modest attire, lingering slightly on the slightly worn cuffs of his jacket. "Still chasing those digital rainbows, are we? I heard you managed to snag a spot in the underdog pitch. Quite the feat, given your unconventional resume." His tone was patronizing, designed to elicit discomfort, to put Kalen firmly in his place. "It's an honor to be here, Theron," Kalen replied, his voice calm, almost detached, betraying none of the furious calculation happening beneath the surface. He believed the platform he developed had significant implications for systemic integrity in large-scale operations. Beyond just the rainbows, as Theron put it. Theron chuckled, a short, dismissive sound that conveyed volumes. "Systemic integrity, you say?" Bold words. He knew, they Advanced Group Ventures prided themselves on their ironclad architecture. Years of investment, top-tier talent. It's a different league, Kalen. Far removed from the move fast and break things ethos of a lone developer. He clapped Kalen on the shoulder, a gesture that felt less like camaraderie and more like an owner patting a pet he deemed harmless. "Good luck with your pitch. Try not to embarrass yourself too much." Kalen offered a small, knowing smile, a subtle curve of the lips that Theron mistook for meekness. He would do his best, Theron. He let Theron believe his words had landed their intended blow, that Kalen was just another hopeful, easily dismissed. This was crucial. He needed Theron to be utterly confident in his own superiority, in his firm's invincibility. His arrogance was not just Kalen's fuel, it was his blindfold. On the day of the pitch, the underdog session was scheduled for late afternoon, after the main keynotes had droned on and the well-funded, polished startups had made their slick presentations. The mood in the room had settled into a kind of weary amusement, an air of polite boredom. Earlier pitches had ranged from the genuinely innovative to the truly outlandish. When Kalen's turn came, he walked onto the stage with a composure that belied the storm brewing within him, a quiet hum of readiness. His initial presentation was deliberately understated. He focused on the benign aspects of Project Cassandra, its ability to predict market trends, to identify supply chain inefficiencies, to optimize resource allocation for small to medium-sized businesses. He showed simple, clean interfaces, highlighting its user-friendliness and its potential for growth. He didn't mention its deeper capabilities, not yet. He let Theron and the other judges see what they expected, a simple, somewhat naive solution from an amateur, perhaps even charming in its simplicity, but certainly not disruptive. As he spoke, he could see Theron shifting in his seat, a flicker of boredom in his eyes, occasionally exchanging a smirk with a fellow judge. Theron was already formulating his condescending questions, preparing to tear down what he perceived as a flimsy house of cards. When Kalen finished, the polite applause was sparse, almost an afterthought. Then came the questions. Predictably, Theron was the first, eager to land the killing blow. "Mr. Thorne," he began, leaning into his microphone, his voice resonating with an exaggerated sincerity that grated on Kalen's ears. "A fascinating demonstration of a rather rudimentary data analytics tool. You speak of systemic integrity, yet your proposed solution seems geared more towards optimizing a corner bakery's inventory. How exactly do you propose this visionary AI of yours would address the kind of complex, multi-layered challenges faced by, say, a global financial institution? Or are those real-world enterprise architecture problems simply beyond the scope of your self-taught expertise?" His words were a calculated strike, designed to undermine Kalen's credibility entirely, to paint him as an amateur out of his depth. The audience chuckled again, a few people nodding in agreement with Theron's assessment. He had set the trap, and Kalen had, to their eyes, walked right into it. But they were wrong. He wasn't walking into a trap, he was opening a door to a truth they were about to confront. The air in the convention hall seemed to crackle with an almost palpable energy as Kalen took a deliberate, measured breath, allowing Theron's condescending remarks to hang in the air for a moment longer than comfortable. The laughter had died down, replaced by a restless murmur as the audience anticipated his fumbled response, his inevitable capitulation. Theron leaned back, a smug satisfaction plastered across his face, his eyes daring Kalen to challenge him, confident in his victory. "Theron," Kalen began, his voice clear and steady, devoid of any hint of agitation or defensiveness. His calmness, so unexpected, seemed to genuinely surprise Theron, a fleeting flicker of confusion crossing his features. "You raise an excellent point about the complexities of real-world enterprise architecture. Indeed, the challenges faced by global financial institutions are immense, particularly when it comes to systemic integrity." His initial presentation merely scratched the surface of Project Cassandra's true capabilities. It focused on the optimistic applications, the potential for growth and efficiency that his platform offered. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the room, meeting the eyes of the other judges, then the audience members, inviting them into a deeper understanding. A few leaned forward, sensing a subtle, profound shift in the narrative. However, Kalen continued, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more resonant. Cassandra was also designed with a far more critical function in mind, the identification of deep-seated vulnerabilities that even the most robust security protocols might overlook. It's about predicting not just opportunities, but existential threats, the kind that can unravel an empire from within. Theron's smirk faltered significantly, replaced by a distinct flicker of unease. Threats? Was Kalen suggesting his rudimentary tool could identify vulnerabilities in systems far more advanced than his own understanding? His tone was still dismissive, but a hint of genuine worry, a nascent seed of doubt, had crept into his voice. "Not just identify, Theron," Kalen corrected gently, his voice maintaining its level calm. "But simulate the impact with chilling accuracy." Theron mentioned Vance Group Ventures and its ironclad architecture. A truly impressive feat, on the surface. Kalen gestured to the large screen behind him, where his platform's interface was still displayed, waiting for its true purpose to be unleashed. But as Theron well knew, even the most complex systems are built on layers, some of which are older, inherited, perhaps not fully re-engineered during rapid expansion phases. He took a step closer to the screen, his fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard on his podium. The interface changed instantly. The clean, simple graphics gave way to a complex, network-like visualization, depicting interconnected nodes and intricate data flows. It was abstract enough not to be directly identifiable as any specific company's network, yet detailed enough to be terrifyingly real in its implications. "This isn't a live system," Kalen clarified, his voice unwavering, ensuring no ethical lines were crossed. "This is a high-fidelity digital twin, a theoretical model built from publicly accessible architectural blueprints and common industry practices. It represents a hypothetical global financial institution's core transaction processing network, one built, for instance, through a series of rapid acquisitions." A low hum began to spread through the audience, no longer one of amusement, but of growing unease. This wasn't the meek response they expected. This was something else entirely, something far more unsettling. Cassandra has identified a specific, multi-stage logic flaw within this simulated network's inherited validation module. On the screen, a particular cluster of nodes began to pulse faintly. This flaw, under very precise, rare conditions, doesn't just allow for data manipulation, it allows for the untraceable, silent rerouting and reallocation of fractional capital sums across millions of daily transactions, accumulating into substantial amounts over time, without triggering conventional fraud detection systems. It's a silent hemorrhage, an architectural backdoor for stealth capital flight, not a typical hacking attempt or brute force breach. The room was utterly silent now, captivated, an almost suffocating stillness hanging in the air. Theron's face had gone from smug to an ashen, sickly pale. His eyes were wide, fixed on the screen, a dawning horror creeping into them. He recognized the architectural patterns Kalen was displaying. He recognized the specific type of legacy system Kalen was referring to. It was exactly what Vance Group Ventures had integrated 2 years ago, the very foundation of their expanded empire. "Let him show them," Kalen said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it commanded the entire room, drawing every pair of eyes to the screen. He initiated a simulated attack. The network visualization began to flicker, subtle red lines appearing, tracing imperceptible pathways through the nodes, like veins of poison spreading through a vital organ. Numbers flashed, representing simulated transactions. Slowly, almost subliminally, a small but consistent outflow of capital began to register in a hidden ledger on the screen, bypassing all standard security checks, a ghost in the financial machine. "This isn't about brute force, Theron," Kalen stated, directly addressing him now, his voice unwavering, each word a hammer blow to Theron's composure. "It's about understanding the deep, often overlooked logic of complex systems, the foundational design choices that, years later, become Achilles' heels. This vulnerability, if present in a real-world system, could bleed an institution dry over months, perhaps even years, before anyone notices. It's a ghost in the machine, undetectable by conventional firewalls or intrusion detection systems because it operates within the normal parameters of the system's own flawed logic." He then projected a smaller window onto the screen, showing the specific lines of code, the intricate architectural diagram of the flawed module. It was highly technical, but the implication, the terrifying reality, was clear for anyone with even a passing understanding of system design. "This particular vulnerability, Theron," Kalen said, his voice gaining a quiet intensity that filled the hall, "is particularly prevalent in financial firms that have rapidly expanded through acquisition, integrating older, less transparent systems with newer, supposedly secure layers. It requires a profound understanding of system interdependencies, not just surface-level penetration testing." Kalen's eyes locked with Theron's. Theron was visibly trembling now, his face a mask of disbelief and growing panic. He knew. He had to know. Vance Group Ventures had exactly this kind of layered architecture, exactly this kind of acquisition history. He had mocked Kalen's foundational understanding of real-world enterprise architecture. Now, Kalen was laying bare the deep, terrifying flaws in his own. "And what's more," Kalen continued, raising his voice slightly, letting the full, devastating weight of his revelation hit the room, "Cassandra can not only identify these flaws, but, with the proper ethical authorization, it can also map out the precise steps to patch them, without disrupting core operations. It's a tool for proactive system defense, for true systemic integrity, designed to prevent catastrophic loss before it even begins." The silence in the room was absolute, profound, broken only by the rapid clicks of journalists' cameras and the frantic, hushed whispers of investors trying to process the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. The laughter had vanished, evaporated into thin air. In its place was a chilling fear, a dawning comprehension of the magnitude of what Kalen had just revealed. Theron Vance, the arrogant investor, the scion of a powerful tech empire, was no longer smug. His face was a contortion of pure terror. His ironclad architecture had been exposed, not by a shadowy hacker, but by the naive dreamer he had so gleefully ridiculed. The immediate aftermath of the reveal was a maelstrom of controlled chaos. As Kalen stepped away from the podium, his presentation concluded, the previously composed judges erupted into a flurry of hushed, urgent conversations. One of them, a stern-faced woman who had initially appeared skeptical, was already on her phone, speaking in urgent, low tones. The audience, moments ago filled with jaded amusement, now buzzed with a palpable mixture of shock and dawning panic. Journalists, recognizing the seismic shift in the industry, began furiously typing on their laptops, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, each click a punctuation mark on the unraveling of Theron's world. Theron Vance, still rooted to his seat, looked as if he had seen a ghost, not a metaphorical one, but a literal specter of his firm's demise. His face was ashen, drained of all color, his mouth slightly agape as if he were trying to gasp for air in a suddenly oxygen-deprived room. He muttered something inaudible, a choked sound, then abruptly pushed back his chair, the screech of metal against the polished floor echoing unervingly in the stunned silence. He stumbled, regained his balance, and without a word, pushed his way through the bewildered crowd, his tailored suit now appearing a crumpled, pathetic mess of fabric, his carefully constructed composure shattered into a million pieces. His hurried, undignified exit was a stark, public admission of the devastating truth Kalin had unveiled. The other judges, though clearly shaken, maintained a degree of professionalism. One of them, a seasoned cybersecurity expert from a rival financial firm, approached Kalin, his expression a complex mix of awe and deep concern. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice low, almost reverent, "what he just demonstrated, if that vulnerability is indeed present in a system of Vance Group scale, the implications are catastrophic. Reputational damage, crippling regulatory fines, potential capital flight from their managed assets. It's a nightmare scenario, the kind that can bring down empires." "It's why Cassandra exists," Kalin replied, his voice still calm, though an undercurrent of exhaustion, a subtle tremor of adrenaline, was beginning to set in. "Not to exploit, but to protect. To illuminate blind spots before they become irreversible catastrophes. To build, not to break." Within hours, the news had exploded across every major financial news outlet and tech blog. "Underdog developer exposes major vulnerability in Vance Group Ventures core system," blared headlines across financial tech news sites, often accompanied by a still image of Kalin's simulated network visualization. The simulated demonstration, meticulously detailed and irrefutable in its logic, was enough. The market reacted swiftly and brutally. Vance Group Ventures stock, which had been steadily climbing for years, plummeted by double-digit percentages in after-hours trading. Regulatory bodies in multiple countries announced immediate investigations into the firm's security protocols. Major clients, undoubtedly spooked by the public revelation and the potential for silent capital erosion, began making urgent inquiries, some even pulling substantial funds from Vance Group's managed portfolios, their trust irrevocably shattered. The ironclad architecture Theron had boasted about was now exposed as a sieve, and the trust that had taken decades to build was eroding in real time, like sand through fingers. Theron, of course, tried desperately to salvage the situation. His family's formidable PR team issued a series of increasingly frantic statements, dismissing Kalin's claims as unsubstantiated speculation and the misguided ramblings of an amateur seeking notoriety. They even tried to paint Kalin as a disgruntled individual with an axe to grind. But the simulated demonstration was too precise, too technically accurate, too undeniably plausible. Kalin's quiet, factual presentation carried far more weight than their blustering, increasingly desperate denials. Industry experts, many of whom Cassandra had quietly alerted Kalin to over the past few months through his analysis of their public statements and research, began corroborating the type of architectural flaw he had highlighted, lending further, independent credence to his claims. They didn't need to confirm it was Vance Group's specific system, only that such a flaw was plausible and devastating in real-world applications. The backlash was swift and merciless for Theron personally. He was publicly reprimanded by his formidable father, removed from several key oversight committees within the Vance Group, and his once unquestioned authority within the firm evaporated like morning mist. His image, once one of a shrewd, rising star, a golden boy destined for greatness, was now irrevocably tarnished. He became the poster child for arrogant oversight, the symbol of inherited privilege failing spectacularly in the face of genuine, self-made genius. His laughter had indeed turned into terror, not just for him, but for the very legacy he stood to inherit. As for Kalin, the transition was surreal. The phone calls, once scarce and often from debt collectors, now never stopped. Investors who had dismissed him just hours before were now clamoring for meetings, offering blank checks and unprecedented partnership deals. Cybersecurity firms wanted to collaborate, governments wanted consultations, eager to apply Cassandra's unique capabilities to their critical infrastructures. His little Project Cassandra, once a solitary endeavor, a quiet hum in his small apartment, was suddenly the most sought-after AI platform in the industry, a beacon of true integrity in a world of superficial security. He found himself in a position of unexpected, profound power, but his focus remained unchanged. This wasn't about revenge, it was about validating a vision. It was about using technology to build, to secure, to make things better, not just to mock and diminish. The terror on Theron's face was a fleeting moment, a punctuation mark, but the validation of his life's work was a profound, lasting reward. Weeks later, the dust began to settle, though the tremors from the underdog pitch continued to ripple through the financial tech world, forever altering its landscape. The Vance Group Ventures, while not entirely collapsing, was undergoing a painful, public restructuring. Investigations confirmed the systemic vulnerability Kaelan had highlighted, forcing them to invest heavily in a complete, costly overhaul of their core infrastructure. Theron Vance, once the golden boy, had been quietly sidelined, his name now synonymous with disastrous oversight. His presence, once commanding and ubiquitous in industry circles, had diminished to a mere footnote in industry gossip. Kaelan occasionally saw a fleeting image of him in business news reports, older, gaunt, his carefully sculpted arrogance replaced by a visible weariness that seemed to have aged him years beyond his true age. He was no longer a player in the high-stakes game he once dominated, merely an unfortunate cautionary tale. Kaelan's life, on the other hand, had transformed entirely, yet the core of who he was remained untouched, grounded in his original vision. Project Cassandra, now proudly rebranded as Integrity AI, had secured substantial, ethical funding, allowing him to expand without compromising his principles. He wasn't interested in a quick exit or becoming another tech billionaire whose name graced magazine covers. His focus was on developing the platform to its full potential, offering its services to institutions truly committed to robust, ethical security, to those who understood the profound value of true systemic integrity. They built partnerships with leading cybersecurity think tanks, collaborated with regulators to shape new industry standards, and started initiatives to train a new generation of observational engineers, individuals who, like Kaelan, could see beyond the surface, recognizing systemic flaws before they escalated into irreversible catastrophes. His small apartment was replaced by a modest, functional office space, a hub of quiet innovation and collaborative brilliance. He still worked long hours, driven by the same insatiable curiosity, but now it was surrounded by a team of brilliant, like-minded individuals who shared his unwavering vision. There was no need for grand gestures or public vindication anymore. The work itself, the quiet, persistent act of building something truly impactful, something that made the world more secure, was his ultimate, profound reward. The peace he felt was not born of Theron's downfall, but from the realization of his own potential, validated not by external approval, but by the tangible, undeniable impact of his creation. Looking back, that day at the summit wasn't just a moment of dramatic reveal, it was a profound lesson in the true nature of power and worth. Theron had wielded the power of inherited status, of conventional authority, of a system designed to favor the privileged. He believed that outward appearances, prestigious degrees, and established networks were the ultimate arbiters of value, the only paths to success. But Kaelan had shown him, and everyone else, that true power lay in quiet observation, in persistent, self-directed learning, and in the relentless pursuit of an unconventional truth, even when dismissed. His laughter had been a weapon of contempt, designed to crush Kaelan, but it was ultimately disarmed by the silent, undeniable power of knowledge, turning on its wielder. The world often underestimates the quiet ones, the ones who operate outside the established norms, who build their dreams brick by painstaking brick in the shadows, fueled by an inner fire no one else can see. It dismisses them as naive, as amateur, simply because they don't fit into predefined boxes of success. But true genius, true innovation, rarely conforms. It thrives in the spaces where others aren't looking, fueled by a determination that doesn't need external validation. Remember this: the loudest voices are not always the wisest, and the grandest stages are not always where the most profound truths are revealed. Sometimes, the most terrifying awakening comes from the most unexpected source, turning the laughter of arrogance into the cold dread of an exposed truth. Always value substance over superficiality, and never, ever underestimate the quiet power of a mind that truly sees. And that's the story of Kalyn Thorne, a true testament to the power of quiet determination and unwavering vision. We tell stories like this often on our channel, tales of justice, of overlooked brilliance, and of life lessons learned the hard way. If you found Kalyn's journey inspiring, or perhaps a little bit terrifying for Theron, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We're constantly bringing you new narratives that challenge assumptions and celebrate the underdog. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever faced similar dismissiveness or mockery for your unconventional ideas or humble beginnings? How did you respond? Or perhaps, what would you have done if you were in Kalyn's shoes? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going.